Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Uncanny Media, the show. It's your good buddy Spider. I'm banging out stuff on the... that sounds really horrible. I'm kicking stuff by mistake on the table here. I'm not banging it out because that's not what the show's about. That's an entirely different bunch of subject matter. Yeesh. Starting out good tonight, aren't we? Welcome. It's your good buddy Spider. I'm having a good time. I've got a lot to celebrate. I have a lot to talk about. It's just been good. It's been good today. It's been good. How have you been? We're on time again, which, sometimes can be sporadic. In the last several episodes, we've had some issues being present. I'm still kicking things on the table here. Let me move those aside. Over there. Putting my feet up, and my feet are kicking things. So, how are you? How are you feeling? How are you doing? What kind of stuff are you going through? I hope it's going well for you. I hope you get through whatever you're going through. I'm doing decent right now. I'm well rested. I'm feeling better. I still have a light cough and a mild amount of nasal congestion, but not much. I'm doing much better than I have been. Every week is an opportunity to improve my health condition of the cold or the sinus infection or whatever it is I've got going on. And so I'm feeling decent right now. I've had a drink already. I have another one here poured. So I'm going to try not to be too... I'm going to try not to let that get me out of control. And, of course, it's still cold here in Ohio. It hasn't gotten to snow yet. We're still not at snow. And it is November. And occasionally in the past, we have been known to get snow as early as Halloween, and we didn't this year. It was alright. My daughter went trick-or-treating twice in 2 different towns. She got 2 big buckets full of candy. She was Batman. And, some people say, oh, well, it's a girl, so she must have been Batgirl, right? No, she had a Batman costume, because that's what she wanted. She wanted to be Batman. And I'm not worried about gender stuff. You know what? That's not a big deal to me. If she wants to be Batman, she can be Batman. She's 11 years old. She had a birthday. I'm not going to worry about it. Now, speaking of my daughter, she had a bit of a, I don't want to say traumatic event today, but she had something that's going to kind of change her life in a subtle but constant kind of way. She's been squinting, like really kind of like looking hard at the TV when she's been playing games and when she's been doing different things around the house. And I noticed, and she's a little sensitive about things, so I didn't want to, we didn't want to get her too focused on it because she's sensitive about health and various things. But we got her an eye appointment, which was yesterday. As of this recording, and she's going to need glasses, which is okay. It's not. I have glasses. Her mom has glasses. Most of my family, my entire family, has glasses or contact lenses or something. We just have things that in our eyes that end up going bad. My eyes are not that bad, all things considered. I can take off my glasses and read things pretty well from a distance and up close. But because my eyes are just shy of being good, I wouldn't say perfect, but just shy of being good, my eyes are constantly correcting themselves to make sure that I can see things properly. And while I can see without my glasses, it's because my eyes are working overtime to do so. And because they work so hard, I get a lot of eye strain, and that gives me headaches. And I've since I was probably 12 years old, I've had, if I don't wear my glasses, I get the worst headaches because my eyes are constantly working overtime to try to focus things and keep things in focus. And with the glasses, they don't have to do that. My daughter has eyes that are slightly worse than that. She has one eye that's having some serious problems. Not like surgery required or anything like that, not health-wise, but she's going to need a different prescription in both eyes. And that's fine. She had her appointment today. We've got lenses on the way. We've got frames picked out. So she'll be wearing glasses like everybody else in the family. And I think it's going to be a little weird for her at first, but I'm supportive. I've had classes since I was, like I said, at least 12, and she's 11, and it's pretty close. And her mom's had glasses since probably before then, I believe. So, it's okay. We'll get her through it. She'll get used to them. They'll become second nature. It's not like a prosthetic arm or something like that. It's not like a big retainer that you gotta wear around your head, you know. Apparently, when I was younger, I had to wear some kind of a brace because I guess my spine wasn't quite right. I don't have any memory of this. I only know what my mom and dad have told me. And I have no reason to disbelieve them. I mean, they've never been abusive or anything like that, so it's not like I'm like, oh, well, they might have been wrong and made that up. But I had to wear some kind of brace for my back, for my spine. Which does make sense, because since I've hurt my back as an adult, it may have always had some kind of, weakness to it, or something of that nature, right? So it adds kind of some believability to that story, so. But we've all had things, either as kids or as young adults, where either you gotta wear glasses or you gotta have something corrected. A lot of people wore braces. I didn't have braces. I don't think anybody in my house had braces. Not that I know of. We had pretty good teeth. I mean, my teeth are horrible now because I didn't take care of them when I was a young adult. And so they're all falling apart, and there's not much I can do for it now. But as far as that kind of stuff, we didn't have braces, we didn't have. But we all had glasses. So, it's a thing. So that happened. But she had her birthday. She had a lot of fun. She got good stuff. Because I always make sure I shop for my daughter's birthday throughout the year. Her birthday is in October. So I start shopping anytime I see something come up throughout the year that I think, oh yeah, I think she'll really like that. I start picking out gifts here or there with different paychecks to make sure that I can afford everything. I don't want to do anything last minute in the off chance that at the last minute I'm not going to have money, right? And that's a very real thing that happens these days. Because, and I know people don't like to listen to it because it's a common talking point among all kinds of different news shows and radio shows and whatever, and it inevitably turns into something political, but I'm not going to steer it that direction. I'm just going to say the economy here in the United States is suffering. And you can say, well, no, manufacturing is great and this and that and whatever. But at the level that I'm at, I've seen my groceries go up. If I bought the same groceries I bought 6 years ago, if I bought the same exact items 6 years ago in the same quantities, the difference has doubled. Almost doubled and a half. It's not quite tripled, but it has doubled and maybe and a half in some places. It used to be around $200, give or take, for a month of groceries, for a couple of weeks of groceries. And now it's like $400 if I bought the same things. I'm cutting corners now, so I'm not getting the same things, where we've really reduced some of the things that we like to focus on nutrition above taste, which is fine. We still get foods that taste good and everything. We're not like eating bread and water, right? But it's a stark difference from where we were several years ago to where we are now in our grocery costs. And it's getting worse. It's getting worse and worse. The cart looks less and less full for the same amount of money every few months, and it's disheartening. But we're getting through it. We're all healthy. We're not malnourished. We're not starving. We're fine. It's a strain. It is a strain to pay for everything on a regular paycheck that isn't even, it's not less than what we used to get. It's the same amount, even more basically than some jobs we've had in the past. But on a positive note, which may help in the economic situation in the near future, I do have to point out that I have finally qualified for YouTube monetization. And that may not seem like a big deal to some folks. They might be like, oh, whatever, you're making videos and on the internet, that's lazy as whatever. But it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of effort, and it takes a lot of patience and persistence to be out there and getting the attention. And I'm not a guy that thrives on attention. I hate attention, to be honest. And here I am on a podcast doing podcast stuff telling people that I hate attention. But it's true. I am not the most social person. I would like to just sit back in my house doing whatever I want at home completely anonymously without speaking to another person outside of the house and get paid for it. I would love to do that. I don't want to disrespect anybody who's listening, being like, oh, well, he doesn't want us as listeners. He'd rather be not. No, I appreciate you listening. I do, because it is helping. It's just my mindset. I'm not a social person. And I've said this before on the show, so it's nothing new. But to get to the point that I've gotten with YouTube and all this other kind of stuff, it's pretty incredible for me. Because this has been basically over the course of a year that I've gone from less than 100 subscribers to over 2,600. And numerous watch hours and views. And it's been such a journey, as they say. And I'm appreciative. I am appreciative. Because I know I'm not the most qualified person to do this kind of stuff. I am, again, not the most social person. So being involved in social things like this, it's difficult for me. People have taken to it to an extent that I am making it profitable. And I'm able to do what I can do to help offset where we are financially as a family. And it feels good. It feels amazing. My account is under review for the application, and I'm assuming I don't have anything problematic on any of my material. I haven't talked, weirdly political or controversial. It's all gaming videos and tasting videos, etc. So I'm working under the assumption that I'm going to be approved, and then by the end of the month, I'm going to be monetized on YouTube, and that's going to be awesome. And that's great news. That's fantastic news. That's super helpful, because every little bit helps towards the bottom line. But let's talk about something specific, because this is, I'm going to be a bit, I always sort of am, because I'm always kind of examining my inner self on these episodes, but I'm going to be slightly more so, I think, than in some other places. I don't want to come off as self-indulgent, because I feel like maybe I will, and I'm not trying to hype myself up or pump up my ego or something like that. But let's talk about self-awareness. And if you're talking about fiction, self-awareness is often used with AI and things where, oh, it's become self-aware. Skynet became self-aware on August whatever, and it just took steps to protect itself. And self-awareness is an indicator of sentience, which is an indicator of true life. If you have sentience, it means you are truly a thinking being with all the rights that should be due to you. Because if you're sentient, you should be on the same level as the only other civilized sentient species we know of, which is ourselves. So if wolves suddenly became sentient, then we'd have to recognize them as citizens, right? I mean, people, you're going to hear that and maybe think that's ludicrous. But it's kind of true, because sentience is an entirely different level of thought. And it's all rooted in self-awareness. You're aware of who and what you are and your place in the universe, so to speak. Not maybe on such a grand level, but at least on some level you do understand that. And that's what makes you sentient. But I'm not going to talk about that specific thing, even though I went into that explanation. I'm going to talk about being self-aware more in an introspective way, because I think that applies especially to this podcast here. This podcast, I feel, is incredibly self-aware. And you might say that I'm being delusional. Again, you might think that's my ego in play, but hear me out. Let's examine this a little bit. Being self-aware as a person is being aware of your own faults in a way that's not necessarily like, oh, I can't talk to people, I'm so terrible, I'm so bad at social interaction, oh my gosh. It's not a depressive sort of like self-esteem issue. It's instead being able to look at and examine your inner self and your various qualities from an objective standpoint, and to understand them, and whether you can change them or not, you at least understand, okay, this is a positive about me, or this is also a negative about me. It's knowing your character flaws. And on some level, it's also trying to see if you can improve on those, but also it's accepting if you know for a fact that it's just something like, you know what, I'm not really able to fix this about myself. Maybe it's a chemical imbalance, or maybe it's something else, and I've worked on it and it doesn't seem to change, but at least I can recognize it, and so I can try to work around it. And that's kind of how I feel about myself. I'm self-aware in that I know what a lot of my faults are, and I try to work around them in a way where they don't control what I do, or they don't bring me down. Not, I mean, emotionally, but bring me down in a practical sense. And that they don't negatively affect the people around me, which is often a difficult thing, because you can't always control things. They're based off of subconscious and various thoughts that you have. That the mind is an incredibly complex thing, right? The mind is... There's so many things going on in there. We're constantly aware of the conscious thoughts that we have, but we have so many subconscious feelings and emotions going through that dictate and move and adjust how we think and act. And we're nowhere close to understanding how it all works. There's a lot of scientific papers out there. There's a lot of different things that say, oh, yeah, well, we've done studies, and when you see this image, it activates this gland, and you start getting hungry, or you start getting sad, or whatever. And we can practically look at a lot of those things. But thoughts and feelings are often not practical. The actual process of self-awareness is not practical, and it's often nonsensical, right? And I don't mean to get this into a weird philosophical, like, I'm not a philosopher per se. I can't compete with the Freud and Jung and various other people, Gurdjieff, and etc. But I feel like the conscious and the way the conscious and the subconscious work is going to be unknowable for the foreseeable future. Because it's not something that you can quantify. It's not something you can boil down to. You can say that certain chemicals in your brain cause happiness. You can talk about endorphins. You can talk about dopamine. You can talk about how certain things cause depression and whatnot. But the actual thoughts that we have, the concrete feelings and thoughts, are ephemeral. They're unknowable. And they just are what they are. And becoming self-aware of your own feelings and thoughts, and being able to identify and recognize that, hey, this is a negative behavior that I've got going on right now. It's an incredibly liberating feeling on the one hand, because it gives you an option on how to deal with such things. On the other hand, it can also make you feel really kind of helpless and a prisoner of your own mind, because there's a lot of things that you just can't control about your thoughts. You can't. Emotions will flare up, and you can control your reaction to them, but you can't control the emotions themselves. Now, there are various levels of Eastern thought from Tibet and from various, Buddhist and Hindu various ideas that would say, oh yes, you can control these and whatever. But I don't think every single mind is capable of that. And I don't mean that in a way that compares one to another, like, oh, you can control your emotions, you must be a better person, you must be more advanced. I don't think that's it. That's too simple an explanation. Everyone's brains are slightly different. Even if you share the same template, our experiences are all different, and what we go through is all different, and so our reactions are all different, and the various thoughts we have are all different. And so while some people can say, yes, I've controlled my emotions, sure, that's great for you, but that's not something you can apply to the population as a whole. And I say that as a person who classically, and I've said this before, historically, has been an angry person throughout my entire life. I've said this in a couple of episodes now. Throughout my entire life, I've struggled with being angry with things, because I think there's just a part of my brain pumping out whatever chemical it is that makes me feel angry, or just makes me feel on a short fuse, or just sets me off. That's going overtime. It's going overboard. There's too much of that pumping out. And maybe if I found the right medication, I could tell it to stop. But I'm not going to hunt down. I'm not going to spend my life trying to hunt down the exact cocktail of drugs I need to tell my brain not to be so angry. I'm not going to spend that kind of time. Instead, I can be aware of the issue, and I can just work on, when I do feel those emotions, I can work on mitigating the effect. I can notice when they crop up, and I can take my deep breaths. I can count to 10. I can do the various things, and I can work on myself. And not everyone can do that, and I understand. And again, I'm not putting myself above anybody saying I can do something that you can't do. It's just something unique that I can do that other people might not be able to do. Maybe they have a different pathway to deal with their own version of the issue that I can't do, because we're all fairly unique on that. And so self-awareness is a really, I feel it's one of the most important tools that we should cultivate as far as mental acuity goes. I'm not entirely sure that people should worry about being more intelligent or learning more things. I think we should just focus on being more emotionally adaptable. Being able to recognize when there's an emotion that you're dealing with that may not be healthy, and figuring out ways to calm it down, to work around it, to cultivate different things that are going to be more constructive, right? And I don't know if any of this is really making sense, to be honest. It's something that was kind of weighing on my mind a little bit. It's an extension from last week's episode. Last week's episode, I talked about how there had been a person from my old school days who'd passed on that I hadn't gotten along with, and I had a pretty negative view on. But here we are 20, 25 years later, and apparently many other people have felt positively about this person, and they've made a positive impact in many other people's lives. And so I'm kind of disconnected to that, and I have to be the one to be like, okay, I mean, I didn't get along with them. I don't feel, personally bad that they're gone. I don't mean to say that flippantly in a way that, again, like, oh, I'm glad they're out of here. I'm not. I don't feel that way. I just don't feel strongly about it because I didn't think that they were such a great person. But then again, I have to be self-aware of the fact that I have not interacted with them for 20, 25 years. And I may not have the most accurate view of them as they were now. Right? And so I have to deal with that. And that led to this episode where I think self-awareness, being able to examine your own thoughts and how you react to things in a rational way, I think that's important. I think that's very important. Because if there were more of that, I think we would have less occasions of us just knee-jerk reaction to things. Because I know a lot of people right now. I could name some names, and I'm not going to because I'm not trying to put some people on the spot, but I can name some names where if I said something to them that was different than their worldview, I know for a fact they would instantly fire back with, well, what do you know about it? Well, what about this? What about this? And they would get defensive, and they would get really about it. And I understand why, but I know that, you know what, we don't have to argue about it. We can disagree, but we don't have to be. If you sit and consider each other's point of view, you can still say, you know what, I see where you're coming from. I don't agree with you, but I see where you're coming from. And this is what I think. And you can get to that point and everybody is still friends, everybody's still family, everybody's still fine. there's a lot less of that, it seems like, in the world right now. It seems like there's a lot less opportunity for discourse. Instead, it's, oh, you're wearing a particular hat? You're a bad person. Oh, you voted for so-and-so? You're a terrible person. Oh, you think this? You're a piece of garbage. And that's it. It's knee-jerk reactions. It's nobody seems to sit back and think, why do you feel like that? What's the deal? I don't feel like that, and I don't understand why you don't feel like that. So let's talk about it. There's not that going on. And the instant reaction you get online from social media is that, well, some things are simply a non-starter. If you support such and such, then I don't care what you have to say. It doesn't matter. Blah, 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 blah. And I can get it from a certain logical standpoint, but at the same time, it's just, how can you fix a system? How can you attempt to show people hypothetically that your way is better if you're immediately just going to cut them off? How can you expect anyone to come around or to wake up or etc., whatever language you want to use about it, if the moment that they say, oh yeah, I supported so-and-so, you're going to just cut them off? And you're going to call them a terrible person, or you're going to call them a certain name or whatever, and that's going to be that. You know, the assumption is that everyone is a quote-unquote lost cause. The assumption is that if somebody says something that you don't like, that, oh, well, they're already in too deep, obviously there's no convincing them. But maybe it's your approach. Maybe it's your approach. If you were a little bit more empathetic. And again, when I say that, some people say, well, you can't be empathetic with people who are this kind of a person because they're blah, 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 blah. And that's maybe what's making them opposition to you. It might be that attitude that's pushing them to be more opposed to what you have to say. If we softened up a little bit and discussed certain things among each other, well, maybe there wouldn't be such a hardened attitude on either side. Because the people up there, like the government people, it's all theater. They don't care. We're in the middle of one of the longest government shutdowns in recent memory, and they don't care. They're all getting paid. They don't care. Who... They're going to sit around and drag it out as long as they want to and yell at the other person, say the other people are bad and they're at fault, and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And they don't care how any of us feel about it. They honestly don't. They only care about how they feel about it because they're getting paid. And it doesn't affect them directly in any way, shape, or form. And yet we're so invested in what they're saying to each other. And like, oh, yeah, this representative, they stand for us, and they said la 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 la, and I believe them. And they don't care. They don't care. They have no idea who you are, and they don't care. They could give a shit about you. It's just how it is. That's politics. And we've put so much power into that. And if we pulled some of that back, I think we'd find out, we'd see them as basically all the actors that they are. They're all acting a part. They don't really care. It's not really an us versus them situation. It's who can manipulate one side or the other better to still stay in office and to get more money out of it. They don't really care about the issues. They don't really care about you. And we need to circle it back around a little bit, we need to be a little bit more self-aware in how we treat each other. Because we're just making the problem worse. We're just increasing the level of misery that's being spread around our various communities. And I don't care for it. I don't like it. I'm not, and I'm in a weird position about it because I don't go out and meet my neighbors. I'm not friends with my neighbors. I'm not going out having barbecues with my neighbors, chatting it up while mowing the lawn, whatever. They're just people who live next door to me. They don't really matter in the long term to me. And I don't mean to say that in a way that's really disrespectful. It's just I don't go to my way to make friends with people because they're just people who live next door. But at the same time, I don't want to see my community turn into a bad place. I've had bad neighbors in the past, multiple times. I've had horrible neighbors that used drugs out in the middle of the driveway and not like just smoking pot. I mean, they like shooting up heroin in the middle of the driveway. I've had that next door. Not the current people I have there now. So people, please don't come around trying to vilify them. Those people are long gone. I had bank robbers living next door for a while. I had somebody running prostitution out of the house 2 houses down until they got evicted. You know, I've had some rough stuff in this neighborhood. But everybody that's here now, for the most part, as far as I'm aware, they mind their business, they do the things, they don't bother anybody. And that's how it is, and I appreciate that. And some of them are friendly with each other. They hang out, they talk to each other, whatever. I don't go out and join the neighborhood powwows, but I appreciate that it's a quieter neighborhood as far as trouble goes. Because nobody wants trouble in the neighborhood. Nobody really wants issues in their neighborhood. Nobody wants to draw attention to the neighborhood. It's just how it is. We all have our own various things going on, and we all want to have our privacy. We don't want things going on. And that's another level of self-awareness. It's knowing that, you know what, it doesn't really matter if I get along with people or if I go out and get friendly with people. It's that I'm not causing trouble, and I don't want them to cause trouble, and I don't want anybody to cause trouble. And as long as we're not causing trouble, there's going to be no trouble. Right? I hope that makes sense. It makes sense to me. It makes sense to me. And if it makes sense to you, please definitely leave a comment and let me know if you have any stories about something that I've talked about. Because I'd love to hear your perspective. So what else do you want to talk about while we're here? Because that took a good chunk of time. And I think I've hit that subject as hard as I can hit it. I think we're probably exhausted the various talking points that I've mentioned there. I just want to, again, reiterate that I am self-aware. Not in a way that puts me up above anybody else in an egotistical fashion, but that I know that I have my failings. I know that I have my character flaws. And I do my best to be able to interact with people despite those flaws. And work on mitigating those flaws while I'm dealing with people so that my actions don't harm other people. Or harm other people's mental state, etc., etc. I try to be respectful of that, regardless of how social I might feel on any given basis. But what else is going on? What else? What else can we talk about? Because we've still got some time on the show, and I don't want to leave things too early. It was Halloween, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, and I talked about how my daughter went around and she got this is good. This is good. Let me get into a couple of stories here. We took my daughter trick or treating. I took her one night, and her mom took her on another night, because one of the nights we went, we were invited by Mr. Robert Solomon from This Uncanny Earth. You might know him. You might know that show. If you don't know that show, you should tune in, because it has me on it. It has Robert Solomon on it. And it has Steven, formerly the intern, no longer the intern, every Thursday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 p.m. Pacific. Make sure you tune in, This Uncanny Earth. But Robert Solomon, he's a good friend of mine. He's been a friend of mine for a long time, and he has a son, of course. And so when we get the chance, we try to arrange get-togethers for the kids to hang out, because it's difficult for my daughter to get out and to get social interaction with people outside of me and her mom, because she's homeschooled, so she doesn't have that public school interaction. And all of our family are several hours away, so any of the kids that might be in the rest of our families, both my side and her mom's side, they're too far away to just up and visit on any given day. So occasionally we have the opportunity she'll hang out with Rob's son, and then they'll play together for a little while. And so they went trick-or-treating. I took her over there to go trick-or-treating. Now, outside of the fact that they had a lot of fun and they got a lot of candy and whatnot, we stopped at one place. We stopped at one house, and they had a sign that said, "Candy, take one, or one potato." Okay? Listen to it again. Candy, take one, or one potato. You heard that correctly. They had a little cardboard box of red potatoes. I don't know if they bought them and they had extra, or if they grew them, or what the deal was, but they had potatoes. And they weren't rotten and they weren't messed up. They had potatoes. And they were actually letting us take both, a piece of candy and a potato. So myself and Robert Solomon, we both took a potato. And Rob's son ended up cutting up his potato and cooking it over a bonfire later. And I guess it was good. I don't know. They cooked it over the bonfire. And the guy giving it out, there were two guys, but one of them had a Rey Mysterio mask, Rey Mysterio Jr. So if you know anything about pro wrestling, you know Rey Mysterio. So the funny story is that I went trick-or-treating and I got a potato from Rey Mysterio. And I, of course, ended up eating it the next day for breakfast. I sliced it up and put it in the air fryer, and I cooked it up with some bacon, and I had some hash, basically. And it was good. It wasn't rotten. It wasn't, it was a solid potato. But that's what I got. I went trick-or-treating and I got a potato. And it's funny, but it was good. And Rob's son was really excited because one of the places that he went to, well, my daughter and him, they both went there, but my daughter didn't pick up one of these. She picked the candy. But he picked up, I guess they had ramen noodle packets. They had packets of ramen noodles, and he likes ramen noodles. My daughter does too, but she just She's like, I got ramen noodles at home. I'm getting candy. If it's Halloween, I'm getting candy. But Rob's son got a pack of ramen noodles, and he was pretty stoked about that. He got his potato, and he got ramen noodles, and he was pretty he was pretty excited about that. When I was a kid, if you got things that weren't candy, you would usually get popcorn balls, which is like, instead of a Rice Krispie treat, instead of the Rice Krispies where you make into the Rice Krispie treat, you use popcorn. And it's a sweet, like crunchy, chewy kind of snack. Or we had occasionally, you get an apple or an orange or something of that nature. You usually didn't get potatoes and ramen noodles. But these kids, they got not only that, but they got stickers, they got temporary tattoos, the stuff that you rub on, right? And then they got little toys, and they got all kinds of things. People treat Halloween almost like it's Easter these days. You get a basket full of candy and toys and whatever. So it was an interesting experience. She went out with and she got $1. A guy was giving out dollars in little sandwich bags, individual $1 bills, and he must have had over $200 that he gave out, because there were a lot of kids out. I don't know if there were about 200, but I mean he had to have enough, because he still had plenty to cover everybody when we went through. So she got some money. She got paid. When she went with her mom to the more local area here in town, she got mostly candy and stuff. But she got Pokemon cards from someplace. She got Pokemon cards, which was super interesting. Again, it's like, I can't imagine when I was a kid that you'd get anything like that. But she got Pokemon cards. And she doesn't really play that much. Like, we've tried to figure out the rules and play a couple times, but it's kind of complicated. And, but she likes having the characters because she's watched the cartoons and things like that. She likes to see and she's got some of the plush toys, the plush Pokemon stuffed toys and stuffed animals and things. So she liked that. And her birthday was good. She wanted macaroni and cheese. And our stove, our oven, has had various issues over the years. We got it secondhand. We bought it from somebody local. We went and picked it up because they were getting rid of it. And it worked fine for a while. And then the regulator or whatever it was for the bottom oven, because it's got a top and a bottom oven. It's 2-in-1, and it's got a stove on top. But the bottom oven, the regulator or something of that nature went out, so it wouldn't hold the temperature. But we had the top part, so we would still be like, all right, well, we can still bake things in the top oven. We just don't have as much space, and that's fine. We're not cooking Thanksgiving turkeys and things in it because, of course, everybody else in my house except for me is vegan, so no point cooking a huge turkey for just myself. So we were just using the top one, and recently something in the electrical cord is bad, because every time we try to plug it in, it pops a breaker. And it's specifically just the oven. And so we have to look into that. We probably have to replace the power cord, which is, you're going to have to cut it off and splice it and do different things, and that's fine. But we don't have the time yet to do that, so we brought out the crock pot. Because my daughter wanted macaroni and cheese for her birthday dinner. She's She likes simple things. Some birthday dinners she's wanted. I think last year she wanted enchiladas or something like that, which was fine. But she wanted macaroni and cheese, and we couldn't use the stove top because if you can't, it's an electric stove. Well, it's a gas stove with electric start, so you can't get it to activate anything and to run the gas if you can't with no electricity, right? So we made the macaroni and cheese in the crock pot, and man, it was rich. It was good. It made me sick. It was so rich and cheesy. And it's vegan cheese, of course, because they're vegan, and I can't have dairy, so it was vegan cheese. But it was so much, I ended up being nauseous like the whole night. I had too much food. It was really dense and really heavy of a meal, really filling. But she had the macaroni and cheese in the crock pot, and we had a no-bake cheesecake because she wanted cheesecake this year. She didn't want just a regular cake. She's had in the past. She's had various fruit-flavored cakes. She's had carrot cake. She had cupcakes and things, and this year she wanted a cheesecake. So not only did we have to find vegan ingredients to make the cheesecake, but we also had to make it without the stove because the stove didn't work. But it turned out pretty good. It set in the fridge, and everything was great. It worked out really well. And so she had a good time. She had a great birthday. If you hear that sound in the background, the train, there's a train that comes through fairly regularly, super early in the morning. As I'm recording this, it's almost 2 a.m. And so the train goes through really loud. It's just down the road where the tracks are. Literally like 2 minutes drive down the road. Anyway, but so my daughter's birthday was good. She got a lot of gifts that she enjoyed. She had the foods that she wanted. And she's 11 years old. She's going to be 12 next year, and then she's going to be a teenager the year after. And I don't know if I'm quite ready for that. It's a weird feeling to have kept a person other than myself alive and healthy for more than 10 years. It doesn't seem like that long. But at the same time, it seems like she's been here forever. You know? And I think only other parents would understand when I say that. So yeah, she's almost a teenager. It's a weird feeling for me. My whole teenage years, all of my childhood was pretty rough, but that's not on the fault of my parents. That's because I was not self-aware. To get back to the subject of the show, I was not self-aware of my emotions and my actions. I knew that they were there, but I didn't have healthy ways of dealing with them. And I hope I've done well enough with her that when she gets to that level and she starts dealing with all these hormones and all these different things going on, I hope she is better prepared to deal with it than I was. And then, again, that's not to say that my parents are at fault, because they're not. I was a particular case, I think. I don't think they expected to have somebody quite so strong-willed and quite so insular as far as my emotions and my mental state. I don't think they've ever quite understood me. And that's not on them. That's all on me. That's not to say that I'm such an incredibly outlier kind of person. It just means that I've made things difficult for people, and I understand that. And I'm in my older years, I have tried more and more to not be a problem for people. And that's not in a self-esteem like, oh, I'm a terrible person and I just bring people down. No, I don't feel like that. I just know that sometimes I can be kind of difficult. I can be difficult to deal with, and I get that. And I'm not going to excuse it. I'm not just going to be like, well, that's just the way I am. If you don't like it, well, screw you. I'm going to try to work on, and I do try to work on being less difficult because I understand how it is. I think I've been, in parts of my life, I've been unreasonably difficult. And that's the area where I try to improve and where I try to do better. I make sure that I don't go out of my way to consciously be a difficult person for people. And if I see that unconsciously, subconsciously, that some things I'm doing are being problematic, I'll examine them and I'll look at them and be like, is this something that's part of my core values that I need to be like, this is where I stand and I'm not budging? Or is this something that I can be more flexible on? Is this something I can kind of be like, all right, I can see I'm being a bit of a problem. Let me see if I can smooth things out a little bit. Because that's what self-awareness is to me. That's, I think, the root of it. It's being willing to look at yourself and understand where you may be a problem and where maybe you aren't. And if you aren't the problem, you stand up for yourself. And I say, hey, you know what? I'm not the problem here. I'm not going to budge for you because I don't think that's necessary. I think you're being unreasonable. But if I see myself be like, you know what? I am being a bit of a problem. What can I do without compromising how I feel to make things easier for everybody? And that's the lesson I think everybody can learn. I think we can all try to be a bit more self-aware of how our actions affect each other and how they affect our interactions with each other. And now maybe sometimes you can kind of bend a little bit. You don't have to sell out. You don't have to betray your values. But you can bend a little in a lot of situations. You can kind of, I'm being a little unreasonable. Maybe I can soften up a little bit. If you'll meet me in the middle here, because we're both being a little unreasonable. Compromise. More compromise. And that's not just like, well, I'll give up something if you give up something. It's just, let's talk this through. And let's find the point where we can agree on something, because right now we're being disagreeable. And it's a constant cycle of growth. And I feel good about where I'm at with it. I think I've done pretty well, and I think I'm doing better all the time. I think I'm presenting the best version of myself that I can, the most authentic version, the most honest version. And that's really the best that I can expect out of myself, I think. And I'm comfortable with it. And I hope all of you out there can look at yourselves in the same way and be like, you know what? I am comfortable with how I feel. I am comfortable with how I treat other people. I'm comfortable with the decisions I'm making. And if I need to, I'll change course. I'll change direction. I'll do what needs to be done. So that's it. We're getting to the last minute or two. It's been a good conversation. It kind of went all over the place, but it was really also very focused, and I appreciate you tuning in and listening, because a lot of these things that I talk about, they're things that are important to me. They may not seem like they're a big deal. They may not seem like there's something that affects you personally, but I hope you take it to heart. And I hope I've entertained you in some way. And I thank you for listening. I appreciate you tuning in. And we'll have another great episode next week. I don't know what it's going to be about. I usually don't know until like a day or so ahead of time because I'm really sporadic like that. But I hope to see you there. And until then, of course, as always, have a good night.